Hello and welcome to the latest webinar from Cloud Assess. We hope you enjoy.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today. We'll be kicking off in just a moment or two. I know we're going to have a few people join us throughout the session, and the session is recorded today, so everybody that did register will be able to access that recording post the event. Thanks for joining us, and we'll kick off and get into it. So our title today for the session, How to Lay the Foundations of a Successful Upskilling Project. We're going to be joined today with a bit of a special guest, Hannah Conkey. Hannah's going to be working through the agenda with me today and taking you through some really nice, insightful content, and got some fantastic experiences to share with us as well. We're going to also give you some insights and some opportunities to jump in and win an iPad. Just scanning the QR code on screen here, you can enter our iPad giveaway, and we can start a conversation there as well. So before we get into the detail of our session today, quick acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we work and live. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past, present, and future. We want you to engage with us today. Lots of interaction will be really, really good from you. Plenty of tools that we've got at your disposal. So throughout the entire session, you can start a Q&A. We're using the Zoom webinar feature there, so questions and answers, Q&A. Chris from my team is going to support you, answer questions that he can, and he'll also flag any questions where myself and Hannah can address those questions at a bit of a Q&A session towards the end of the event. Don't hesitate, don't hold back, get in there, share some experiences too. All your thoughts, insights will be really, really welcome, and feel free to put us to the test and give us any sort of queries that you've got as we go through it. There is going to be a bit of a poll in the event as well. That poll just to get some insights from you, and we'll discuss those results as we go. It is anonymous. We don't see who's voted what, and there's certainly no right and wrong answers to the poll as well. After the event, post the event, we're also going to communicate with you, a bit of a survey, and it will also contain the collateral, the slides, and the recording. So look out for your emails. I'm going to hand over to Hannah. Hannah's going to do the awkward introduction of herself today. So Hannah, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time today and sharing the experience with our listeners.
Thanks, Alex. Very excited to be here. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. Obviously, really looking forward to the conversation with Alex, and obviously any questions that you have as we go through. A couple of things about me, and thank you, Alex, for giving me this special job. So most people
we did give Hannah 3 things to introduce herself with, so we set her a bit of a task and a bit of an agenda on this one. So I think you've had a really good swing at it. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you. So for me, yeah, most people probably know I'm pretty obsessed with learning. It's something I do all day, every day, and something that I really enjoy. So whether it's going through the supermarket, doing my shopping, or catching transport or anything else, or making lunch or cooking, I'm generally learning, listening to podcasts and audiobooks. I am a little bit obsessed with health and fitness, so I run. Did my first half marathon earlier this year. I've got another one coming up in December, so that was interesting and obviously a little bit addictive. And I also enjoy spending a lot of time with my family. So very close with my family. I have 2 boys. I have a 16-year-old son, and I have a King Charles Cavalier, and they actually bicker like brothers, but they're great fun, and I enjoy spending a lot of time with them. Professionally, I'm very grateful to have worked across some really complex organisations, and a lot of my background and experience has been in banking and finance. So early in my career, started off as a banker after studying psychology and neuroscience, but having some experience as a banker was really helpful for me thinking about commercial and taking some of those commercial factors and how do we measure and assess the value that we add into the learning roles that I've worked in, and also into organisational design, development and transformation. So I've worked in some complex transformational programs in lots of different organisations, and the value of that, rather than them being really easy and simple and enjoyable, some of them were actually quite complex, and the learning and the value from that early on in my career, I think, really helped me get a good understanding as to how organisations operate and made things easier for me as time's gone by. I also was very fortunate to co-found a business early in my career which was around health and fitness, and working with a lot of executives in leadership teams, people that were in quite senior roles within organisations with a lot of pressure and trying to show up and be their best and influence and lead the organisation and be role models and make decisions. It was easy to see how some of them would sacrifice investing in themselves and sit at their desk for their lunch break and not necessarily eat healthy or get good sleep or have some of those good practices in place. So being able to work with senior leaders and get them focusing on themselves to be their best, to then also implement strategies across the organisation around health and fitness and wellbeing as well. The third one for me, Helen from Cloud Assess gave me a bit of a challenge to come up with something funny. I don't know if anyone's had to do this before. I'm sure you have. When you're thinking about funny things, most of them are probably embarrassing and inappropriate. So the one that I was thinking about, perhaps the most relevant, is if I absolutely love what I do and I'm very grateful for it. And every day I wake up thinking how lucky I am that I get to work on things that I love every day. If I wasn't doing this, my alternative career would have been as a rally car racer. So my son has given me lots of feedback on this, and given he's just turned 16, I've been teaching him how to drive. So that's been quite interesting. Fortunately, he's a very conscientious, conservative, low risk-taking driver, so it's been a really good experience so far. And hopefully he doesn't pick up too many of my driving habits.
I know what our next social event ought to be, Hannah. I think we'll meet at the track.
Love it. I'm all in. Thanks, Alex.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the intro there. Also, QR code on the slide will get you straight to MindPilot, Hannah's website. Definitely jump in. Really, really interesting and quite a diverse topic that Hannah's got, heaps of information around. And yeah, definitely check it out. Awesome. Okay. So I'll just give us a bit of an overview and an insight into the agenda for today. Today's agenda, we're going to be having a look at the skills landscape. So something we're really passionate around being part of here at Cloud Assess as well. The skills landscape, we're going to have a look at some data sets and talk through some reports and statistics that have been found. We're going to have a bit of an uncovering of some of the barriers as well to leading a successful upskilling project. We're going to find out what is neuroscience. I've got to be honest, I had to have a bit of a Google on that one too, just to make sure I fully understood the angles. Collective intelligence, we're going to review Hannah's 5-point plan, and I'll give you some insights to some of the features and functionality of Cloud Assess, some that we've launched very recently that really align to this requirement and give you a fantastic opportunity to include a really fit-for-purpose solution within that plan in your delivery models as well. Okay. So, like every good presentation, we have a quote. This one's from Stephen Covey. Stephen is a well-known author and educator. He's behind the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Unless you're continually improving your skills, you're quickly becoming irrelevant. And I think that's really, really poignant to our day's topic, and really focused on that skills creation piece. Awesome. We're going to jump straight in. Let's get interactive with the attendees here. So there's a poll. It should have opened up in a little dialog box on your screen. And our first poll here: lay the foundations of a successful upskilling project. Okay, so hopefully you can see the title on my screen as well. What challenges do you face most often when tackling an upskilling project? So there's a couple of options there to answer. We'll give you a minute or two to answer that. As I say, completely anonymous. There's no right and wrong. Jump in there, give us a bit of an insight to what you feel would be the challenges, or from your experience, what you've identified as the challenges that you have faced when tackling any upskilling projects. Give you a moment, and then we'll be able to share the results with you. And let us know in the Q&A as well as you go if you have any challenges with that, or you'd like some side conversation. Throw us some questions for the Q&A at the end. Feel free. Okay. So we'll share the responses there. Quite a mixed bag. That's probably one of the most even polls that I've seen. We've got 22% of you picking the first three options. So there was only a slight winner there. Balancing upskilling with day-to-day operations came in at 33%. So the slight majority went for that final option. I think it's good. I think that tells the story. What's your thoughts on that result there, Hannah?
Yeah, really interesting. I'm surprised to see such an even split. I think some of these are common challenges that most of us obviously face, and key things to work through when thinking about how we go about upskilling, and particularly in today's environment as well. So really, I think we'll obviously address some of these, but yeah, interesting that it's such an even split across them.
For sure. And I think it's going to be natural that based on our roles, we'll have quite an influence into where we feel that we might come across those barriers. I think, if we're very operationally focused, the 33% majority, I'd feel I'd sit in that space too. So yeah, I do think it's very much the lens we look through on our day-to-day is where we're going to, perhaps envisage some of those challenges. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for engaging with the poll. And sharing that with us. Okay, so the skills landscape. Hannah, do you want to step us through the 6-point summary here that we've got?
Sure, thanks, Alex. So if anyone that's online at the moment has attended any of the recent conferences, or particularly over the last 12 months, or read any future skills, future of work type reports, you're probably familiar with a lot of what's in here. I think some of the key things around really understanding how to address the global labour market disparities, so particularly around vulnerable and lower income earners, looking at what the opportunities are there, and particularly with the global economic state. I think I might just touch on them as we go through, but there's some of the key highlights for me were particularly around the need to include and address AI in HR processes, to look at it as how we integrate it into our day-to-day processes, and helping use AI and digital to enhance capability. So working in partnership with the sort of human intelligence. Some of the other ones that I quite liked and thought were interesting were around blending technical with personal. So again, not just looking at your human, business and digital skills in isolation, but looking at what are holistically the types of skills that people need, and not just focusing on the big programs of work around, okay, we need to address AI or, digital over here, and then now we've got a challenge around how to help people deal with change, or help people develop skills around resilience and adaptability. So being able to integrate some of those key skills, but also look at how to build micro skills in those different areas so that people are continuously learning. Some other key insights, again, which I think is probably not a new thing, but around helping people and organisations understand that with the increase and the rise in the number of employees having side hustles, that will obviously continue to grow, and people having more of an entrepreneurial lens. What does that mean for organisations when it comes to brand loyalty, to organisational purpose, to the work that we do in the community, and being a sustainable organisation, our values? So from an attraction and retention perspective, those were key insights. Top skills in demand were around analytical and creative thinking, so with 60% of workers needing reskilling to stay relevant. there was very much, I looked across multiple reports from Forbes, the World Economic Forum, and also the Future of Jobs report. And a lot of them were really focused in on the need to reskill, to upskill. Yes, that automation will take some roles, but as it has over the last 50 years, where we've seen that increase in technology, that it's not just about removing roles, it's about changing the way that we work, and that really key need to focus on reskilling and upskilling and attracting people into the organisation that want to focus on increasing their skills, learning, being curious, that are adaptable and agile when it comes to learning and upskilling, and the need for both organisations to invest in people holistically around their health, their well-being, and the people side of it, not just the technical and the business skills. We've obviously seen a much greater increase around cost of living and people needing to return to work, and the cost of day-to-day living, and people being back in the office. So just being aware of some of those cost challenges as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary there. Curiously, do you think the sort of increase or the more sort of common side hustle piece is people craving a bit of creativity, perhaps, that they're not always getting in their roles? Maybe sometimes technology can be a fantastic resource, but does it quash sometimes creativity, maybe?
Yeah, I think it does to a certain extent. It's funny seeing some of this playing out now. I remember probably 8 years ago when I was at CPA Australia, and we were looking at the future of work and doing some work with Deakin at that stage, and expecting roles to change and looking at org design, how to structure roles for the future. And I think a lot of this is starting to play out now, where we are seeing a much greater focus around people being entrepreneurial, wanting to do their own thing, creating greater flexibility. Many of us got a taste of that with COVID, even though there were lots of other challenges, but having a bit of a taste of what does flexibility in life and choice and the ability to be creative and try different things is absolutely there. And ultimately, some of it, I think, aligns back to people's purpose. What's their motivation? What's their purpose? What's the value that people are looking for out of their life that gives them meaning and satisfaction, but also enables them to generate an income and set themselves up for the future as well? And I think that's a key driver for it too.
Yeah. Fantastic share there. And I couldn't agree more with the training needs. Very typically an old school training needs analysis or a training plan is a very static document that, doesn't get reviewed frequently. I think absolutely being attached to those micro skills and the real true skills requirements of the business are forever changing, changing quicker than ever. And to keep relevant, to keep effective, and to keep efficient, it's absolutely having that basis of our plan to what those training needs are for the individual, for the business, and for future is has never been more exciting and challenging at the same time.
Yeah, definitely very exciting. I think that piece around, what do we need to do today, whilst also having the longer term vision around, well, where do we need to get to? Where do we want to get to? What might be possible? And being able to anticipate and build for some of that as well. And I know that yourself and the team did quite a bit of work at Cloud Assess around looking at the state of, skills. And obviously that's a big area that you play in. Here's a slide you prepared earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're right, Hannah. We did earlier this year in the UK and the EU there. We did a survey, and we surveyed a cross section of sort of HR and L&D professionals, and generated what we call the State of Skills Report 2024. It's really insightful. There's a QR code on screen where you can get access to that. I would definitely recommend you do that. I think there's some stuff in there that'll really sort of change your perception in some of those areas. There's some of the ways the facts and figures came out of that surprised me, and I've been around the industry quite some time. To get a really, really nice insight there, definitely jump in, have a look at it. The key finding, 85.3% see a direct correlation between business success and workforce capability. That's a really, really strong message there, generating those skills, identifying and unpacking the skills requirements, super relevant to that alignment to the business goal. Yeah, fantastic.
I think it's when you look at these becoming really apparent that organizations that invest in learning and recruiting and retaining employees that have that learning mindset is absolutely a game changer for organizational success, to not just stay relevant now, but obviously for the future as well.
Yeah, that lifelong desire for learning is something that, and I think COVID gave us some opportunities with that. It pushed us all out of our comfort zone a bit, made us reassess where we have those skills gaps, be it the fact we now need to do online banking, or we can't attend the post office like we were doing. Those sorts of things, with all new skills we had to, we were forced upon us to have to learn, and they had very different impacts to very different people. But yeah, it's certainly been a change sort of lever, hasn't it, that we perhaps didn't expect. Awesome. So potential barriers.
So definitely interested in some of the reasons as to why learning might not stick. And I think coming back to some of the areas that people highlighted before, there's obviously reasons why we need to do learning. So what's the organizational driver or individual driver for needing to create learning experiences or to upskill people, and recognizing the fact that a lot of the time there are things that get in the way. And I think most of this won't be new for people, just around people the short-term focus. Even people being here today, it means that you've got to take time away from your day-to-day role. You've got to be here. It means you're saying yes to something. If you say yes to something, participating in learning means you've got to say no to something else. So recognizing that, time is a challenge, focus on priorities, how relevant is the learning? Is it part of my broader goal or my business's goal or the organizational focus? Is it a key focus and priority right now? Is it going to help me right now? Or is it something, there's sort of just-in-time learning, or is it something I should be focusing on at a later time? How effective is the learning? So one of my favorite opportunities to try and change in the learning space is learning not being, or the L&D function, and learning not being a service provider, and having that sort of, we've got a problem, give it to learning will solve it. It's really what's the challenge or what's the opportunity that we're trying to shift, and have we got the right solution in place? How are we going to be able to measure it? And not just from that was a great learning experience, to did we increase employee engagement, retention, performance? Did we get the behaviour change? Did the customers get the outcome they were looking for? Where have we actually moved the dial? Have we got the right measures? Do we know what the measures are that we need to be looking at outside of the learner feedback? I think resistance to change is obviously another key one. And the diverse learning styles, this is interesting, and I'll touch on this in a moment, because we do learn differently. But there's some good strategies around learning, and obviously recognizing our brains are all different, and the environment and the organizations that we work in and the relevance around learning, all of those things come into play too, not just the way that we like to learn.
For sure. So you touched on it there, the brain, how we're all different, and the mechanisms there. 5 sense learning.
So this is an area I'm really passionate about, and I'm not sure who we've got on the line today, but obviously thrilled to have everyone join us. So I think these are things that people can apply for themselves or for yourselves, not just for your learners as well. When you start really putting this into practice and becoming aware of it and thinking about it, it's actually really insightful and enables us to be really intentional about what we're learning, how we're learning, and the impact of that. So our brain, our nervous system is incredibly powerful, and the more that I learn about it, the way the brain works, our nervous system works, our bodies, it's incredible, and absolutely obsessed with it, because everything that we're experiencing, everything, what comes in and what goes out through our 5 different senses. So everything that we taste, touch, hear, smell, see affects our brain, our chemistry. It affects our all the molecules in our body. It affects absolutely everything. So what we experience coming in, so everything that you expose yourself to, whether it's, you know, the news, social media, learning, seeing people, talking to people, conversations that you have, the food that you eat, all of those things literally change our wiring. And so understanding some of those and then being able to be really clear on what information we want to let come in to affect our brains will then have a positive or negative effect on our ability to function effectively. So both in terms of learning, performance, and memory. When we look at what does that mean in terms of the organisational focus on learning and upskilling, so for me, I try and look at it from a personal, professional, and organisational effectiveness lens. So if we're trying to build a learning organisation and learning culture and encourage people to develop a learning mindset, it's starting from within. So change comes from within, helping people develop a learning mindset and driving personal effectiveness. And then also, you know, that sort of top down, bottom up, where we're also looking at from an organisational perspective, have we got the right strategy, the right structure, the right messaging from the leadership teams? Do they understand learning and our ability to connect? And so getting buy-in and support from the leadership teams to develop a really good learning strategy and understand the value of investing in learning. So I think if we can get individuals to take ownership and accountability and see the value for them both personally and professionally, the organisation gets the value, and obviously then we're able to have a greater impact beyond just the organisation into our customers and the community as well.
Absolutely, something we're seeing with really, really successful business as well. So, you know, the focus is definitely there in some that are doing a really good job with it. Now, I know you've got a quick clip here that you wanted us to share.
So learning's really messy, and again, so many of the processes, you know, our brain and biological processes are automated. We operate on autopilot most of the day. We breathe, we walk, we talk, we move, we do all these different things without even being aware of it. And so when we start thinking about learning and strengthening, you know, strengthening connections in the brain, we also go through a process where we're constantly pruning things that are not helpful. So if you think about, we get what we focus on. So whatever you're focusing on, whatever you repeat, whatever you do, think about, talk about repeatedly, we remember, and we're strengthening those connections. If you learn to play the piano or basketball, you know, 20 years ago, and then you don't do that for another 10 or 20 years, there's probably elements where you'll remember bits and pieces, but if you sit down or you try and do it again, perhaps it's not as clear and you can't do it as simply and as quickly. So recognizing that, you know, what we don't use, we lose. That's the synaptic pruning process, but also the repetition and the testing and the strengthening those neural connections is really important. My son doing his, you know, going into doing VCE, we're constantly talking about this process and enabling time to learn something and not interrupting the connection process. So if you sort of think about every time you try and strengthen a connection, if you pick up your phone or we send people back on to do their job once they've, you know, participated in a learning program, if we straight away just send them back to what they were doing before, we're not giving them enough time to really think about and for the brain to digest it and make those connections and to strengthen them so that the learning and neuroplasticity occurs. So even just some of the learning design and work design is really key to understand.
Awesome. So a bit more sort of breakdown of what is meant by neuroscience.
So for me, I like to look at and how we design our programs and org design and other components is around looking at the developmental side, so how the brain forms, grows and changes, so some of your neuroplasticity components. The cognitive, which is around how the brain creates and controls thoughts, language, problem solving, learning, memory, and then the I guess broader component, which is around understanding how our bodies, with what we eat and what we do and what we experience, how even things like food. So if you're making decisions or you're wanting to enhance learning, memory focused decision making, there's a lot of research and data that shows things like having sugar is not great for that, whereas having higher protein and higher fat diet before going in to make a decision, or if you've got an exam or learning, or trying to increase personal effectiveness, or if you have a tough conversation to have. So the things that we eat, consume, all affect our body as well. And the same thing back to the 5 sense learning components. All of those things that we interact with have the ability to change our brain and our body, and ultimately our effectiveness.
Yeah, I think it's a really good reminder of what drives the machine, what makes us tick, and the small changes or the things that we feel don't impact us, or sometimes things that we don't feel we should take time on or don't consider taking time with, has such a big impact to the outcomes, the goals, and our performance. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great insights from a bit of a personal understanding, developmental wise. How does it change how we approach perhaps different age groups, different cohorts, different sort of backgrounds and the like? Is there any considerations or any sort of key learnings there, especially if we're looking at the developmental side of the model? Is there anything for consideration there that is backed by any fact?
So I think obviously all of our brains are different, and so understanding who your audience is, understanding the greater awareness we have of ourselves is obviously key, but also understanding who your audience is, who you're communicating with. And I guess there's elements around NLP and different things too that I quite like, with the way that we communicate and design learning that taps into the brain and our effectiveness. So I think when it comes to the way that we're communicating, designing learning, it's hard to really try and factor in absolutely everything, but there's some simple things that we can do around looking at the type of learning that you're wanting people to have. So is it innovative or is it task focused? So the environmental things like getting people to go out and walk and have a conversation, or being in a high ceiling location versus being in a small room to do more task focus. The conversation and sharing, giving people time to reflect. As we age, and our brains obviously change from the time that we're quite young, obviously throughout our whole life. So there's all of those factors as well. But I think some of the things that we can do, and not necessarily as learning experts, but certainly individually, if we can help people understand some of the factors around what they eat and supplements that they take, and the role of diet, caffeine, sleep, all of those things can be quite performance enhancing or inhibiting, depending on what it is that people are trying to achieve.
Yeah, good insights. I think there's a strong overtone there of absolutely we need to measure to know what the direction we've gone, the journey we're on is relevant and right for the diverse people that will be applying the training designs to and our projects to, but also a strong support there for sort of self-assessment and making sure that we understand what works for us, and giving people the tools to be able to leverage that is really, really important as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool. Okay, Hannah, your question.
So most of us, as we're growing up, I think, we go to school, we learn how to operate within the context of a school environment. And I see a lot of kids and adults come out of school, and they've spent so much time in that particular process of learning that they don't want to learn anymore. So coming into an organization, we also don't necessarily teach people, and I think definitely today it's much better, but we don't necessarily teach people how to be good at relationships, how to eat well, how to exercise, how to look after yourselves, some of the life skills, and even finance. But again, I am starting to see some of this shift now. So most challenges that people most challenges that people experience are linked to a knowledge or skill gap and can be overcome through learning. So whether that's a difficult conversation with your manager, whether it's not necessarily liking the financial situation that you have, whether it's health and fitness, whatever it is, most things, when we break it down, we can link them back to a gap in knowledge or skill. And so I think that's quite empowering for people and for organisations to realise that if you build that knowledge and those skills, it reduces the feeling of overwhelm and sometimes, that feeling of anxiety and lack of ability to change, or lack of, internal resources to change things. So we're very fortunate to be in a time where there's so much information out there, sometimes too much information. So being able to focus on less is more, so that people don't experience that sort of change fatigue or overwhelm around making decisions, but absolutely recognizing that if I don't like this, or I'm feeling stuck or challenged by this, what can I learn to change the situation? Get obsessed with whatever that topic is. If you want to improve your relationship, or you want to get better at a particular skill at work, get obsessed with that particular capability area or skill and work your way through it.
Fantastic. And I love the insights here. A lot of those skills are enablers and foundations to actually then being able to tackle perhaps the business relevant or the task relevant skills that are, much more practically identified. So yeah, I love the approach.
Thank you. So I think this one's interesting, just coming back to what people were talking about earlier from the poll. I think we've got a combination of the three, and if we can, again, encourage people to focus on building these themselves, and also from the organisation as well. Most organisations have an investment around, people, employee value proposition, health and wellbeing strategies, EAP. That was one of the other insights from the Forbes anticipated or predicted workplace transfer 2025, which was around changing the traditional EAP approach into more holistic health and wellness strategies. So I think if we can really help people understand the areas that they need to focus on, and that they go together and not focusing on them in isolation. One of the things that I love, which is actually pretty cool, is around neurotech. So there's some, sorry, you can jump to the next slide. It's okay. Thank you. Is around neurotech. So there's some really cool technology coming out, both, to look at people performance. So most people might have a smartwatch, or you've got glucose monitors, or there's new headbands that you can get to track your brainwave activity and to look at your stress, focus, and also, direct stimulation to get different parts of your brain working differently. There's the eye tracking. So again, probably 8 or so years ago, we were looking at some of these things to measure and assess high-performing employees and what they do well, what their habits are and practices are. So I think there'll be some really interesting insights when it comes to looking at the human intelligence. So things like your what we were talking about before around biological factors, so your genetics, your brain structure, and then obviously environmental factors. So your whole kind of people component, along with what does that mean in terms of integrating it with your business intelligence. So we need people to have these key business capabilities. And I often see this as a gap, particularly for learning and some people in HR roles where we've not necessarily had experience working in the business. We're often working on the business. So getting a really good understanding as to how the business operates, speaking their language, understanding the challenges that they face, and then looking at how we can leverage digital intelligence. So whether that's your LMSs, the ChatGPT, any other digital tools, to enhance productivity, insights, and innovation. And I think pulling those together, not just relying on one or the other, but actually being able to leverage them all to get a holistic, integrated framework. So you would see elements of this, Alex, with the work that you do, and obviously different individuals, and being able to map that end-to-end process where you're, collecting human intelligence and business intelligence, and then obviously using the LMS and getting some of these key insights. What are some of the trends, perhaps, or things that you might be seeing in this space?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And I think just identifying that you don't start at the digital intelligence piece sometimes with these projects is absolutely key. You can run in there with suggested solutions, but they're pretty poor if you haven't done the sort of groundwork with the organization to understand where their sort of decision making is driven from, how their problem solving is led, what got us to the data that we're looking at, or the problem that they're describing isn't necessarily always factual. And there's a big piece that can be very consultative that kind of has to ensure that we're looking a bit of a broader view than just diving straight into the solutions piece. Sometimes solutions that people feel they need are driven because they're doing something quite unique. Now, they might have to do a process quite uniquely, but in a lot of instances, it's just because they thought that was their way to do it, or it's how they've always done it. And sometimes a really healthy challenge to that needs to occur to ensure that we're fixing the right problems with the right tools. So always making sure that we go back to, is it fit for purpose, and what are the underlying sort of drivers for this requirement. But yeah, the business intelligence piece touched more on it than perhaps the human intelligence. The human intelligence piece sometimes is easily overlooked when you're very operational. So, in the world where I find myself quite often, it's very operational. And taking a step back to say, actually, are we considering this? Do we have resistance because of this? Or what is the key drivers? And usually it's a good, healthy combination. But yeah, a key learning I've taken away from reading the slides prior to the session and talking with you as well is that human intelligence piece is so important to driving success as well. It's that foundational piece that you have to have strong considerations for.
Thank you. I mean, we've had some really interesting conversations, and I've loved our chats around my sort of abstract ideas and problems that I've been wanting to solve around some of this, and then being able to look at, well, how does the technology and the systems support and enable that, and how can we work with the strategy and the ideas and the opportunities and the problems that we're trying to solve, and then leveraging the tech to be able to do that instead of starting with the tech and needing to fit everything into that.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes it's the byproduct or the output of applying tech that gives you unexpected benefits, which is data, visibility of problems, the ability to highlight where inefficiency is or where roadblocks are. Sometimes roadblocks are described to you and they're not accurately described to you because we haven't got the great data, or we don't have the visibility, or the problem is, in a filing cabinet somewhere and not unearthed. So yeah, sometimes you can get the byproduct is very, very useful to actually reassess and replan. Sometimes, your first swing at it isn't always the right way. And applying the technology is the enabler to unlock that. Actually, we didn't get it right. But we would never have known that without getting some great data behind it. So yeah, I think it's a super exciting space when you actually don't get it right every time. There's real value in that. Let's try it. Let's soft launch this. Let's get feedback. Let's engage with the end user. Let's check. Let's measure. And as you said earlier, measure is so easily not taken as a priority, and it's absolutely that's our own learnings. And bring back to the learning model. Yeah, every project is going to have learnings. How we're documenting that. How personally are we accepting or acknowledging that? If we've led a project and we were really clear on how we were going to do it and the outcomes we were going to have, are we accepting of the fact that there's some learnings in there we didn't expect, and how are we going to apply those?
Yeah, I love that, and I think that the ability to do that quite quickly, and I'll talk a little bit to that in a moment too. But that ability to celebrate, when those learnings are often where things don't go well, and being able to iterate and design and iterate quite quickly, get those learnings. Great, we've missed something, or sometimes you've got to start with something and build on it and change it and adjust it to make it more fit for purpose. And over time, that will continue to change anyway, as business needs change or technology changes, or there's other shifts. But I think having that mindset and being positive about the opportunities and the learnings and celebrating and recognizing that, I think is quite cool.
Absolutely. In our world, there's a very, very frequently used, I wouldn't say overused, I nearly did. I'm still on the fence with it. Word of agile, and agile gets thrown around a lot. Now, when we're talking agile in this concept, I suppose that's where that micro skills and reassessing the requirements all the time. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that's agile. I'd say it's an absolute requirement. It's not just of technology, it's of approach to the project, it's approach to our learning, it's approach to our models. Everything, has to be fluid. Change has never been quicker. Influences from outside requirements and markets we operate in have so quick change nowadays, and technology is a massive enabler to being able to keep up with the change, but also identify the change, review data, present options. Very different world. Every sort of every year that we get new insights to how quick that change is impacting the outcomes we're having.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Love it. Okay, I'll go through this really quickly. Most of this is not rocket science. I'm sure most of you will have seen something similar to this anyway. For me, it's really around making sure we've got alignment to the strategic goals. We understand what the broader purpose is, what the organisation's trying to achieve, what the business strategy is, why we're doing what we're doing, to make sure that we're providing the right solution. So human-centered design, ultimately, yes, we are working with technology and other elements, but our people are humans and our customers are humans. So whether you, depending on the type of business that you work in, ultimately your end users are often human as well. So taking a human-centered design approach, designing with the brain in mind, thinking about the strategy, structure, people, technology, and processes. I think sometimes, again, particularly around learning, we've got to think more strategically back to that OD type. Is it an org design or structure challenge and we're trying to solve it with learning, or is it a technology solution? So just getting really comfortable asking those questions and making sure that we are designing the right solution for the right purpose. Visibility of structured pathways for competence and growth. So I love this. I think, it aligns back to the previous one. What are the capabilities or the skills that we need both now, medium term and long term? And again, they will continue to change, and that's great. So learning culture and learning mindset's key. Combined skills around human, business and digital, your skills mapping and pathways. We've got the opportunity to assess people. So when you're recruiting people, for me, what assessment are we using? Why are we using that assessment? And recognizing that nobody's perfect and it's about the right skills and capabilities for the right role. So you might have an absolute superstar who's not suited to that role, but they are suited to something else. So getting comfortable helping people build development plans from day one and creating visibility for employees. So one of the things that I love, and we've obviously gone through this, Alex, is the ability with Cloud Assess to be able to track and map both current and future and look at those capabilities and give employees visibility as to where they're at now and how they can continue to grow and develop different skills in quite an iterative way. Sorry, Alex, you go.
No. I know you're on a roll.
Demonstrating and celebrating the value of learning and investing in learning. this is huge for me as we're developing the learning strategy, being really clear on the measures. So again, being able to link it back to commercial drivers. I saw a presentation the other day in Sydney. I was at a conference. There was one person that talked about commercial and the P&L and could literally just rattle off all the different numbers and figures. And for me, that's, I just think that's awesome. I love that. So get really good at doing that, because when we can link what we're doing in learning back to the organizational, to the bottom line, to the customers, to attraction, retention, performance, engagement, or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, it does increase your credibility. It does help get a seat at the table for the future for your business cases as well. And obviously things like leveraging the technology where you can. So having that holistic approach around your strategy. Making learning or continuous learning a core value. So again, trying to attract people with a learning mindset, helping build a learning mindset from within. When I was at RACV, we used to run Learning to Be Your Best masterclasses. First time we ran it, we had 150 people turn up. So people want to learn, and they want to learn more than just, I was told that I need to learn this skill. If we help them be good learners, we help them learn how to learn and want to invest in themselves personally and professionally. When it comes to doing what they need to do for work, it'll be easy because they won't be avoiding it and they'll have the confidence to do it. There's a couple of things in here which might not make sense to people, but just sort of halfway down, I've got Pomodoro, STTT, environment, innovation, etc. So Pomodoro, you can Google it, but Pomodoro is a learning design technique, which is basically getting people to learn for 25 minutes, followed by giving them a 5-minute break. Don't touch your phone. Don't talk to somebody else. Don't, check your emails. Just sit and allow time for your brain to process it all. And then maybe then have a conversation with someone or go for a walking meeting and outside and talk to somebody else. So that's a really good way just to help strengthen those connections. And if anyone follows Andrew Huberman on Huberman Lab, he talks about study, test, test, test. So this is more recent neuroscience-based proven methodologies around designing learning. So a lot of people will study, or study, test. If you get people to study and then get them to reflect it back to themselves, to write it down or practice explaining it and then teach somebody else, it really strengthens those connections and actually helps facilitate the neuroplasticity process.
Not going to lie, I had to Google that one myself.
Sorry,
I had to Google that one myself. Yeah. In such a technology-focused world as well, I think it's so relevant. Yeah.
Very helpful. And I definitely think there's something in it for people too, then, that they know that they've learned what they need to. Not just, I've gone away, I was meant to learn something, can I actually do it? So, and then the last one around the measures are great. Often we might start with measures, maybe we measure and evaluate learner effectiveness or learner experience, learner engagement. And then it's sort of, we say that we're going to do it up front and then it kind of drops off. And maybe we don't ever share it back to the leadership team or the CEO or whoever it is in the organization that we've made these commitments to. So get really comfortable with measuring, evaluating, sharing the insights, get comfortable with the failures and the things that don't work, test, learn, and iterate. But this is a really good way for us in learning or in any role to take ownership and accountability, hold ourselves accountable to deliver what we said we would, and then also promote and market the value of what you've done. So if you said that it was going to shift these metrics, being able to then go back and say, yeah, like these programs have led to an increase in engagement, retention, performance, capability uplift, multi-skilling, mobility, whatever it is that you're trying to measure. Don't just share the data, tell the story. What does it mean? And what other opportunities are there down the track to iterate based on what you've learned?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good one there as well is the results aren't always immediate. In a previous role with a previous business, part of a rather big change project. Thankfully, it wasn't my project, but part of it. And we set some very unrealistic timeframes, which we hadn't identified as being unrealistic, to measure success of the project. and it became, it was literally called a failure. The project was, nearly written off. And during the time that it took to redesign and reestablish a different direction and a new project with a new project lead and everything else, the original project actually started delivering on the results. It just takes time. What we'd failed to do is start with a realistic plan. Yeah, I think that's an absolute key one that's very easily overlooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. From a cloud assess perspective, we have a really powerful tool called Skills Matrix, and the Skills Matrix provides a global view of skills in your organization. It's an on-the-fly, quick, ready reckoner that can be sliced and spliced by department or organizational structure. It's a really good way of seeing competency at a team level, at a site level, at a task level. We can pull job roles and organizational structures to really, really sort of represent a business's sort of uniqueness, and we can identify gaps and drive plans forward really quickly. QR code on the screen, that'll jump you into our website, and a bit of an overview. Definitely get in touch if this is the tool that you've got some opportunities to investigate there with us. We'll also deliver you fantastic assessment experiences as well. So assessment, both formative and summative assessment, Cloud Assess, every mode, every method of assessment can be delivered. And this goes back to Hannah's, right assessment for the right reason. Is it always learning? Is it always assessment? So making sure that we've got tools that are flexible enough to deliver on what we need without compromise. Cloud Assess is very assessment centric, which means we are absolutely at the forefront of what can be achieved here. There should be no compromise with what you need from an assessment tool and an assessment model. And for our attendees today, there's a free course catalog, can be accessed again off the QR code or jump onto our website. You will get this detail in the pack in the information we send. The course catalog, free assessment features, that can be accessed as part of the trial and the pro accounts as well. But the course catalog, a great piece of professional development, hundreds and hundreds of topics, very industry specific, and a great way of getting some further knowledge. Just a bit of an overview really of the key takeaways as well. So, aligning the tools with strategic goals, defining your ideal worker, mapping the technical competencies and collective intelligence skills, focus on learning. Hannah, some key takeaways here?
Yeah. I think if people can get a bit of a general understanding of neuroscience, there's some really cool, simple tools and some free resources for people to take away. And absolutely also really encourage people, if you're not using Cloud Assess or the Skills Matrix, it's one of the best that I've come across, which is actually why I'm here. So I absolutely love it, and have had some really great conversations with Alex. So I really encourage you to check it out if you haven't already.
Thank you very much, Hannah. A couple of QR codes I'll leave on the screen there as well, where we will have a minute or two for some Q&A, and we can definitely continue conversations post the hour should you wish to. So definitely jump in the Q&A section of the webinar should you have any unanswered questions or things you'd like to sort of explore a little bit in the conversation there. Myself and Hannah will hang around to see any of those. But please engage with us post the webinar there. Jump onto Hannah's MindPilot's 5-point plan and website as well. If you see Hannah at any of the L&D events and forums and symposiums, definitely say hi and connect with us all. And Hannah, it just leaves me to thank you very much for your input and your investment of time today. I know you're very busy, as we all are. And, you've got a fantastic experience there and some brilliant insights to share. A very different sort of approach to some of the more traditional sort of L&D focus. It was really insightful for myself. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Alex. And thank you so much for everyone for joining as well. I hope it's of value. Awesome.
So we'll we'll pause there. Hannah, we'll maybe just take ourselves off camera, have a bit of a stretch and a drink, and we'll just hang for a minute or two, answer those last couple of questions that Chris might have paused for us. But thank you very much, everybody. That'll end our webinar, and you'll look out for your email with a copy of the recording and everything else. Looking forward to speaking to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.